Alpine Liquid Fertilizers is your full-season crop fertility specialist from start to finish. Visit alpinepfl.com for more.
Hi, I'm Amber Bell, and this is Real Agriculture. I am here today at the Western Canada Conference on Soil Health and Grazing, speaking with Derek Leahy of Rural Roots to Climate Solutions. It's really great to see you again, Derek.
I don't know, it's been a really long time. I'm happy to be here.
It has been a long time. And Rural Roots has kind of gone through quite the shift. So can we talk a little bit first, give our listeners just a background on what Rural Roots to Climate Solutions is?
For sure, yeah. So Rural Roots to Climate Solutions got started in 2017. We used to be a project of the Stettler Learning Center, so out in East Central Alberta. Basically, we were started as an agricultural and climate literacy project. The idea was we wanted to run some workshops and field days talking about the good things that agriculture could do in relation to the environment, in relation to climate change, and also in relation to producers' bottom lines, because at the end of the day, if we want land stewardship, we need land stewards, so we can't just be doing all these lovely environmental things for free. Like, it has to be still profitable at the end of the day. So yeah, we just started like any other agriculture extension organization with that, and then we just sort of went through a bit of an explosion. Like, honestly, I thought this was gonna be like 1 year of my life and I'd move on to something else, and this is what, like 8 years later almost. So yeah, now basically we're an organization that exists to support rural communities. We're still very much focused on Alberta, but we support rural communities to implement and benefit from different climate solutions that make sense for where they are. There's stuff that work in cities that probably aren't going to work in rural communities, stuff that works in Ontario that's not going to work in Alberta too.
Right, and I feel like you guys have done a really good job of kind of bridging that gap between the urban and rural divide. Like, you're somewhere in the middle of that.
Totally, yeah. I was really surprised, even though, even with our podcast, I was surprised the appeal it had for people in Calgary and Edmonton, because when I'm doing the podcast, I'm only thinking producers in Alberta. But yeah, there's something about telling this other story, or a story that hadn't got a lot of attention when we got started up, that had that urban and rural appeal. And then yeah, a couple of the projects we work on, we do have rural and urban participants, which was terrifying at first. Actually, having rural and urban participants in the same event kind of scared me because of the urban-rural divide, but everybody was just awesome with each other, actually.
Right, and how have you seen that? Because that's been a lot of growth in the last few years. So how have you seen that growth? And just, of course, you're not going to have any data on the sociological aspects of this, but what have you seen kind of in personality styles and how people have interacted?
Within those particular projects?
Yeah, between agriculture and, some of the more urban or even rural communities, right? In towns and...
Yeah, I think it's just some of the terminology that we used to think was taboo, or just don't bring it up in a conversation because it's going to be the end of the conversation. It's not anymore. When we got started, I don't even think agricultural climate solutions was a term, and now the federal government's got a whole fund behind that, and it's a common language. And even when we started our own regenerative agriculture lab, I didn't realize how divisive that term could be for some folks, and there was some real reasons why it upsetted people, and I get it. But a lot of that's gone now. There's still some folks up there that disagree, and we don't have to agree on everything. That's okay. Yeah. But I find a lot of the terminology and concepts, it's creeping into the mainstream. I wouldn't say it's the agriculture that everybody's practicing right now, but it's not some friggin' wonky idea anymore. It's oh, this is a thing, and it, producers are proving it works too in many cases. So.
Right. So let's talk about proving that it works. And I mean, you've been working on quite a few projects, especially in the past few years. Yeah. So let's talk about some of your projects. What do you have going on right now?
Yeah. So like I said before, when we got started, we were mainly doing workshops and field days. We had a pretty good stretch of working on the podcast. Unfortunately, the podcast host, i.e. me, has run out of time for it, so I haven't actually done one in a year. But we a few years ago, we stumbled into this space that some people call it social innovation, or a participant-driven space. So we took a question which is very relevant to the conference: how do you accelerate adoption rates of regenerative agriculture in Alberta, but do it in a way that it keeps its integrity intact, that it doesn't? And I have nothing against sustainability, but almost everything seems sustainable these days. I've kind of forgotten what that word means. So we wanted all those beautiful things and wonderful things that we think regenerative agriculture can do for people, planet, and everything that's sharing the land with us, we didn't want to lose that. So we created this social innovation lab where we got together the representation from the agri-food value chain. So that means getting ranchers, farmers, butchers, owners of restaurants, people in government together. Everybody who's involved in food somehow is like, listen, this is your lived experience. This is what you do in your day jobs. How do you think we answer this question? So through this participant-driven process, people, and this is where a lot of that urban-rural divide stuff wasn't happening, but I was scared it was going to happen. Basically, they start coming up with like system solutions. So some of them could be something as simple as like the polycultures campaign we ran last year. Other ones are talking about like basically how to add like land stewardship as an incentive when it comes to like land ownership. Yeah.
Very cool. And okay, let's go to that question. What is your opinion on what sustainable means then?
Yeah, I mean, I think like literally is like you sustain something, so it just keeps going like that. So I think if we'd hit like peak, I don't know, ecological function, then it's okay to like nothing aside from like cancer, like nothing should really keep on growing. Like you need a cap or roof on it somewhere. So I think it's more sustaining what we have right now is okay, but I feel like we can do better. So with sustainable, it's just like, okay, we're just not going to make things worse. But regenerative is like, yeah, we're going to improve on what we've been able to sustain right now. So it means we're going to make things better to a point. Because, yeah, eventually, like, you can't, I don't think you'd be able to make any more improvements at one point.
Right. And have you seen that plateau on the people side of things? When it comes to like their excitement for regeneration or for their own land and willingness to go into new projects?
I think it's sometimes it can depend on the year. So yeah, if I think you're having like a really, really dry year, then yeah, probably your enthusiasm for trying like new practices or something like regenerative agriculture is going to go out the door. But I don't know, on the whole, I'd say no. I'd say like it's still becoming like either people are starting getting to know it, or it's still something that's like is fairly popular in certain circles. So like obviously like a conference like this still sells out. So I wouldn't say it's plateaued. It's definitely still increasing.
It's excitement around it. Yeah. And what are you most excited about going into this next year?
Yeah, a bunch of stuff. Well, one thing I'm really excited to get back on the podcast because I really do miss it because I do think this province has a lot of great stories out there. We just don't always get a chance to tell them, which is really great that you're doing that for us right now. And then, yeah, within the Regenerative Agriculture Lab, a lot of those like system solutions that we've been working on. So we piloted a lot of them last year, and now we're going to try and like replicate that success. And then the other project that's taken a bit of time to get going, but now it's actually moving at a better pace, or maybe a more sustainable pace, is we call it the Siksikaitsattipi Agriculture Project. Siksikaitsattipi is just means Blackfoot Confederacy in Blackfoot. And in that, again, it's a social innovation, participant-driven project. We're getting Blackfoot members together, so we're running 4 different talking circles in 4 different Blackfoot nations to basically identify where Blackfoot ways of knowing connect or align with agricultural climate solutions. So just having a group discussion there. And then where we make those connections, then, and this would be a later phase of the project, so would it be next year? Once we figure out where Blackfoot ways of knowing align with agricultural climate solutions, we have that discussion like, okay, how do we accelerate these? Because for the most part within the Confederacy, say a lot of the agriculture practices are still what we think as like traditional or conventional agriculture practices.
Right. Yeah. That's fascinating work that you're doing, and it's really exciting to get the chance to catch up with you.
Yeah.
And that was Derek Leahy on Real Agriculture. Did you enjoy this content? Well, don't forget to hit that like button. And you can always sign up for our free customizable newsletters at realagriculture.com/subscribe. You don't want to miss any of the content that's coming out.